Here in Rhode Island and Massachusetts, ready to kick off our Guardians Against Ticks program. We have all of our tick experts here, our bug biting team, and we're ready to provide you guys with the best, most accurate, and up-to-date information. Can you please introduce yourself? What's your name, your title, what do you do, why are you a tick expert?
I'm Paul Killinger, and I am the Education Director at TickReport Tick Testing. And I've been with the lab for a number of years now and wear a lot of hats, but a big part of what I do is I try to take the very specific science that we do and make that legible to the public.
Right.
And sometimes be with folks at a very stressful point in their lives and just try to put some of that stress in context and give them next steps for where they should be going, kind of for themselves, with their doctor, and sometimes with whoever they're caring for with a tick bite.
So you do actual tick testing to help identify if a tick's carries some kind of tick-borne illness, or can indicate that if that specific tick bit you, it could possibly turn into something you need to pay attention to and be on high alert.
Yep. Yeah, so we deal with the tick itself. That is what is happening in the lab. The tick and all of the little microbes that are inside that tick. And so we're doing direct testing, which means that we're looking for the Lyme bacteria itself, rather than the antibodies that our bodies would produce in reaction to it. And so we're able to do things a little bit more comprehensively because we're testing the entire tick,
right,
not just with diagnosis, a blood draw, whatever happens to be passing by. And it's much easier to just do a wide array of tests. So we're able to test for up to 25 pathogens at a time, and in a way that's much more accessible than it would be in a medical setting.
Right. So if you're bitten by a tick, or you notice a tick on you, you properly remove the tick, what should people do? And then how can they utilize a service like yours to help them on their journey after they discover a tick?
For me, the first step is always just stop, take a breath, and hold on to that tick, because that tick is the main evidence that we have in sort of investigating this tick bite experience. Right? That is just our primary evidence. And first step, if you can do nothing else, you want it identified by an expert.
Right.
There are multiple ways to do that, through Tick Encounter, through TickReport, but you want a confident identification of that tick. They're a lot harder to identify than you think.
Right.
They're very small.
Yeah.
And, when we're looking at it, it's not color, it's not size, but knowing what kind of tick it is, that kind of takes that list of 25 pathogens that kind of ticks anywhere can carry,
right,
and it's going to narrow it. So this type of tick is going to have some very likely, some not so likely, and some we would be really, really surprised if we found this pathogen in this tick.
Right.
And for each tick, that list is going to change.
And so for peace of mind, sending a tick in and just getting some kind of indication of what it could be carrying, what it is, if you come down with something, that now gives you the upper hand to bring that information to your medical provider or for your next steps on your journey.
Sure. Yeah, to me, tick testing just fundamentally changes the timeline,
right,
of and the waiting game after a tick bite. So Lyme diagnostic testing isn't perfect,
right,
but it gets even worse sometimes the way that we use it, where if you had a tick bite last night,
right,
you went to your doctor today and had a blood draw, that's not going to tell you very much about that tick bite. It'll give you a baseline, but you should come back in 4 weeks once the antibodies would have had time to develop. So you have kind of normal scenario without tick testing.
right,
You have a tick bite, you have a big list of maybe pathogens that you could have been exposed to, and you're waiting between 3 days and 3 weeks for any symptoms to appear, and most of them start looking like the flu.
Right.
So tick testing can give you a good list of narrowed down possibilities right away.
Right.
For many folks, we've got results back to them, especially if they're local, probably within 19, 20 hours of that tick being removed. And so that gives them a point where now they sort of know if fever, fatigue, headache, whatever symptoms that are sort of shared by all tick-borne illnesses, they know, all right, so some of my strong contenders here are Lyme disease, anaplasmosis, and babesiosis, because I got unlucky and my tick carried 3 different things. So it really shortens that waiting game, and it gives people concrete evidence about this exposure.
Yeah.
Doesn't guarantee that the illness is going to happen, but it gives you and your doctor really specific symptoms and next action steps to take.
And a point, it seems like, that they can build off of. So if something happens, they at least have that evidence.
I think doctors find a lot of utility in our service as well, because if they're familiar with tick-borne illness and its treatment, they know about that waiting game.
Right.
So they know that you have an appointment, it's a very high stress time, and the best thing they can really do, rather than sort of give you a false sense of action, the best thing they could do normally is just say, why don't we meet again in a month?
Yeah.
When antibody tests will be most effective. For a lot of doctors, I think that this kind of changes some of that game, where say, all right,
they feel more confident in prescribing something or starting treatment sooner. So a tick can carry multiple tick-borne illness.
Can.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I personally didn't know that. Your testing can detect if there's more than one type of pathogen it's carrying that could possibly be transmitted.
Yep.
If that's the case, that information is also relevant to the doctor as far as treatment, because if, let's say, Lyme came back positive, but maybe there's something else happening, could that possibly be affecting a treatment if it's only being treated for one?
Yep.
So that's a really big, that's really interesting.
And some of those, it may be if they're looking to pair it up with diagnostic testing afterwards to see if that disease developed, tells them what tests.
So with your tick testing, what is the quantity that you're getting, and is that increasing, and what locations and areas are people sending ticks in from?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so in a typical year, we'll test between 15 and 20,000 ticks. And that'll depend a little bit on the year. Some years drought or other conditions could change something, but generally 15 to 20,000 ticks per year. 40 to 60% of those are all in May, June, July, for better or worse.
Yeah.
And so we really got our start in Massachusetts, kind of started as a smaller program, really looking at Cape Cod and some other towns. And we've expanded. We receive ticks from all 50 states every single year. And so far we've received ticks from 22 other countries.
So it's a global problem, because some people, even in our own community, swear ticks are not a problem or an issue or something they should be paying attention to in their state, and that just proves that's completely inaccurate.
Ticks are absolutely everywhere. Some will have ticks that are more human biting than others, but almost all ticks, they're opportunists.
Yeah.
And if we go to where they are, even if they're very specific, they only like to bite woodchucks. If we or our dogs get too close to a woodchuck burrow, they're happy to accept a free meal.
Right.
And so, yeah, there's an awful lot of ticks there where we don't really expect them. And the way that we gather ticks, I've gotten them from everywhere but Antarctica.
Wow.
And just waiting to finish my bingo card there.
There we go.
When you're in this sort of position and you have access to the experts and are kind of watching the data in real time. It can be very frustrating to be on the internet and social media and see a lot of this misinformation in action and being just echoed and repeated. One of the scenarios that we see a lot is people go on a social media page and they have a picture of a tick. So I just pulled this off my 1-year-old. What is it? What do I do? And I scroll down through the comments, and just tick identification is a lot harder than people give it credit for. There are free ways to send that picture to people who do this all the time for a living, and can also connect you to the data, kind of the next step. Not only what is it, but what can it do? So something like Tick Encounter and their Tick Spotters program is great. We also do it as well. Testing, reading the DNA of a tick does take a lot of time and materials, but if you send us an email with a photo, I'm more than happy to identify it, try to see how long it's been feeding, and talk to you about some of the risks, whether you're going to test or not, whether you're interested, whether you have the resources for it. That's a free service that just public health is there for all of us.
I love that. That's excellent. With the amount of ticks that people are sending into you, because you're getting thousands per month at this point, what percentage, because I think Lyme disease is so prominent and talked about, what percentage of those ticks are Lyme, and what are actually testing positive for other types of pathogens? And is this something that people should be aware of?
It really depends on the species. Some types of ticks are certainly more dangerous than others. Public enemy number one is always the deer tick. And the adult deer tick in the Northeast, kind of going over through New York, Pennsylvania, and down as far as at least Maryland, is going to be pretty consistent. At the adult stage, 50% ticks are going to carry a pathogen. Lyme, Borrelia burgdorferi, is going to be the biggest one, but there are several others to throw a lot of Latin around. There's Anaplasma, there's Babesia microti, which is important because it's not a bacteria. And so if you sort of take the general response of let's throw antibiotics at a tick bite, enough antibiotics should help most cases of Lyme disease, anaplasmosis. They're not going to affect Babesia because it just doesn't work for it. Still very treatable in most cases if you know that it's there, and you take another drug that is in every pharmacy. It's within a mile of your house. Treatment is accessible, but you have to know to ask for. We test ticks from all sorts of people: dogs, cats, llamas, tortoises, exotic birds, rabbits.
So like if you notice a tick comes from a different location where you're not noticing consistency, and you notice and you're able to diagnose that tick has this type of, tick-borne illness in it, what do you do, and how can you help further, evoke change or get it on their radar?
Tick surveillance isn't unique. We're not the ones who came up with the idea of taking ticks and testing them. In most cases, it's done. We do this as well. You go out into the field and you drag some cloth around, you pick the ticks off, and what you're doing is you have a research location and you're looking at tick abundance and infection levels there. And what's great is that you can come back to that little strip of land time and again, and you can track those changes over time. And that's being done everywhere, kind of every state in the US, and many other universities, counties, other agencies are doing that. And that's important. And sometimes that surveillance can be limited by the questions that are being asked. One of our advantages, and one of the ways that we've accidentally made some real breakthroughs geographically, is that as we sort of welcomed an audience from across the country and now across the globe, we really developed standard arrangements of pathogens just for efficiency, so that when a tick comes in, we're not having to pick and choose. And sometimes that has shown us that something like bourbon virus and heartland virus, which are kind of a lower Midwest, upper South sort of pathogen, they're actually really common on the east end of Long Island. And that sort of raised some flags. There were some people who said, "Are you sure?"
Yeah.
And after a few years of that active surveillance, they found out it actually was true. And so, in a lot of these smaller surveillance projects or localized surveillance projects, if they aren't asking more questions,
Right.
if they're only asking, is there Lyme bacteria here? Is there whatever pathogen is? If they aren't asking these other questions, things are going to be missed. And we have found
You're just
quite a number
with your own program, right? Because you're noticing ticks carrying things that you didn't know, right? Or that are being recognized in those areas. So
people move around, ticks move around, and those pathogens move as well.
Yeah.
And again, it's kind of an accident, but it's a way that I've found over the years we're really making a difference and finding some of this spread of pathogens and kind of putting some of these surprises on people's radar.
thank you, number one, for being a part of our Guardians Against Ticks program. We just are really focused on bringing all the experts in their respective areas together and really teaching our community, other communities, the proper and most effective way, answer all the questions that they're bringing to us and having. So we're really excited to have you on board to help us get the right information out there.
We're really glad that you're doing it. It's very easy for us, I think, to all stay in our own little neighborhoods, and we don't always do the best job of getting what we know out to folks on the street. And I see this as a great opportunity for that to happen.
It's exciting. Thank you.
Thanks.